The following is a local resident producer's program. The program content is the sole responsibility of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, your host, and very pleased to be welcoming back to the show for I think the third or fourth time Sheriff John Matz of the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. And we were going to be talking a few weeks ago, and I had a personal nature thing that came up, and he was wonderful enough to let me reschedule, and so I'm very pleased to have him here tonight. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
How many times have you been on here now? Is this the fourth, or are we coming in on fifth?
I think it's the fourth time.
Okay.
Yep.
Because I know we had you on when your predecessor was leaving. We had the two of you on at the same time.
Yes.
And then you've been on a few times since. So it's always good to have you here. How's your summer been going? Now that the kids are back to school and summer is kind of winding down, how has it been?
Well, summer was extremely busy. All of our summers are filled with events with Country USA, Rock USA, EAA. We have a Lao Hmong Festival this weekend that'll be at Ford Festival Field. So it's extremely busy, but it goes by really fast.
Yeah, yeah. The summer, it was just blazing through for me, and probably for you guys too.
Right.
One thing that you do in the summer is you always do the 4th of July on the steps of the courthouse. You read the Declaration of Independence. Now, was this your third year doing that, or fourth?
This was my fourth year.
Okay.
Fourth year, yes.
That time flies too, doesn't
It does. It does.
So, do you have it memorized now?
No, Supervisor Wingren that has me working on that, but I don't have it yet.
Okay, almost though, right?
Almost.
Now, that's a big thing, and I know you're always real honored to be able to do that. Why is that so important?
It is the birth of our nation. When you take a look at the conviction that those individuals had to write and to sign the Declaration of Independence, starting the birth of our country, denouncing everything that England had done and continued to do, and they signed their own death warrant. Many of them ended up dead, penniless, their families, their possessions were gone, and they knew that before they wrote it and before they signed it. And that type of patriotism is unsurpassed. Mm-hmm. So it truly is an honor to recreate how the word was given out during that time frame.
Yeah. How is the, and I was going to get there this year, and then those family things, again, were an issue. So how's the attendance been to see this and hear it being read?
It continues to grow. People will come back year after year, they'll tell friends, and then we'll have people that just happen to hear about it, whether it's on the radio or something in the newspaper or word of mouth, and it continues to grow, and people really enjoy it. And I think that they really start to think about what the words actually mean. Mm-hmm. When you look at what was written, what the intent was, why we did what we did, and where we are today, and are we, are there some things that we need to change in our own society to get back to where we were then?
Yeah, yeah. And that is something too, to a lot of people it's just a bunch of words strung together into sentences. But when you really do start to read them and try and think about what they say, it's amazing, And if we just followed the things like the Declaration of Independence and things that our forefathers wrote, you know, they pretty well had it all summed up, and we just need to follow that and stop all this adding amendments here and changing things there. I think it pretty well covered everything and everybody the way these documents were written way back when.
I totally agree.
You know.
I totally agree. I think they had so much foresight when the Constitution was written, the Declaration, the Bill of Rights. Those things that they had written, they just had unbelievable foresight when they wrote them. And it even talks about things that they could not have, you wouldn't think they would even know about, the mass media like we have now, and just so many different things.
Yeah, but it's like anything, you know, something happens and you feel like you have to add something new to it. You know, like when I was a landlord, I thought my lease and my little documents that go with it were pretty all-inclusive, and I had some tenants who were sunbathing on the roof and drinking beer. And the roof wasn't obviously a sunroof. It didn't have railings around it or anything, and it had a slight grade to it. And they said, well, it doesn't say anything in the lease about we can't be on the roof. Okay.
Now you have
So
to
we'll
add something
add
to the
something
lease,
in
yep.
about not being on the roof.
Right.
And so things get bigger and bigger, and that's how it is with our documents too. But really just on their base beginnings, I think they pretty much covered everything.
I totally agree.
So, speaking of covering things, let's talk about some of the other things that are going on, not just with you, but with the, you know, the department as a whole. Do you see crime increasing in the summer months because people have windows open, screen doors, you know, not open, but the main door open, just so that you can get some breeze through the screen doors? Is crime usually worse in the summer?
There are spikes that occur during the warmer months when more people are out and about. We have seen statistically as a nation, crime is going down. However, we still have seen things in our area such as the heroin trafficking and other drug trafficking has been an increase, and not so much an increase when you look at national numbers, but when you look at the numbers that we have here in our community, they have risen because we didn't have those issues before, at least not as prevalent. So we are seeing some spikes in that area, and then along with the drug trafficking and the drug use comes the property crimes to support their habits, and we have seen an increase there as well.
Sure. I want to talk about heroin use in a little bit here. What kinds of crime tips could you give people to you know, help them avoid being a victim of crime, whether it be in their vehicles, in their cars, or just walking down the street?
It's always be aware of your surroundings. Always have your head on a swivel. Look for things that are out of place. And of course, as far as your vehicle and your home is concerned, make sure it's secure. Whether you're there or not, make sure your home is secure. We have had some home invasions where people have been home at the time that things have been taken. There have been some confrontations, although very limited. We've seen them in our area. So make sure that you're securing your residence. Make sure you're securing your vehicle. And when things look out of place, take note of that. No one knows your neighborhood, knows your home, knows your children better than you. So make sure you're paying attention to what's occurring.
Well, and if I might just add one more thing to that, you know, if we're starting to hear more and more this expression, if you see something, say something. And I don't know of anyone within city or county government that would be upset if you called them because something looks amiss.
Yes, and like I said, when you look at your neighbor's home and you see that the garage door, side garage door is open and it's never open, call somebody. Call the sheriff's office, call the Oshkosh Police Department or any other agencies within the county and let them know. They'll check it out. Maybe it was just a mistake by the homeowner, but certainly it could be something else that's occurring that we need to be aware of.
Yeah. I mean, one day there was just someone in my neighborhood just sitting in a car, and they were looking around and making notes on, like, I don't know if it was a tablet or a laptop or whatever, and they were, and then, you know, another neighbor came and pulled into their driveway and so forth, and they seemed to be making a note of that. And I just thought, this is very odd. So I just called, you know, I didn't call the emergency number, I just called the local police department, and I said, you know, this may be nothing, but this is what's happening. And they sent someone out, and before I knew it, that person was gone. So I don't know what they were doing, but, you know, it probably was absolutely nothing. but it's best to, you know, say something and be wrong than say nothing and then something major happens.
Right, and if that person is doing nothing wrong and they are there for a very legal, legitimate reason, they don't have any issue making contact with law enforcement and explaining what they're doing. But if they're not, obviously that's when the issues occur, and those are the things we want to be aware of.
Sure, sure. We're taping this at the beginning of September, and it's getting to be that time when every government and all of its departments start putting together their budgets. Sheriff, what does the Sheriff's Department look like as far as its budget goes for the upcoming new year?
Well, it looks very similar to other years, other than the courthouse security complex that was added, the county board approved. Along with that came 3 additional positions, 2 part-time deputies and 2 civilian staff to run that center. The security checkpoint will allow us to check visitors coming into the facility, to make sure that weapons are not getting into the courthouse, and to make sure that our employees are safe and the visitors are safe.
Okay, so tell us again about this courthouse security thing, because there was a period of time shortly after 9/11 when there were stepped-up security things happening at the courthouse, and that kind of went away after, I don't even know, how long was that in place? It wasn't very long.
No, it was a few months where it was in place, and the problem was the building is, I believe, 80 years old, approximately. It's 1936, I believe it was built. So it wasn't designed to really have security in mind. So back when we tried to do it shortly after 9/11, people were standing outside in the cold, standing outside in the rain, waiting to go through the security checkpoint. We recognized at that point that we couldn't continue to do things that same way, and we needed to have a checkpoint, something that was covered, something that kept people out of the weather, something that had modern equipment in it, and that's what the county board approved, and we're really looking forward to securing the courthouse. We have had issues in the courthouse. We have had knives get into the courthouse. We've had a loaded magazine. We've had brass knuckles, and those are the things that we found. I think even more concerning is the things we didn't find, and someone decided not to do something. The courthouse is a highly emotional place. Things occur there, divorces, family issues where children are taken away. There's decisions made on parenting rights. There are people that are convicted of crimes where victims' families are present and they've lost somebody in some type of homicide, whether it's a drug overdose or whether it's a drunk driver that took someone's life, or it's you know, that type of a weapon or knife was used to kill someone. So it's highly emotional. We recognize that, and I'm very thankful that we finally have done something to at least make sure that weapons are not getting in there.
So what kind of system or security plan is going to be in place now? And has it started yet, or when will it start?
No, it has not started. We're hoping, the plan is to be done about November or December of 2016.
Okay.
And people will enter the courthouse. They will go through a screening, much like an airport, where their baggage will be screened, and then they'll be screened, and they'll have to empty their pockets. And a lot of it will just be education. You'll know that you can't bring certain things into the courthouse any longer. And we anticipate that that'll take a few months, but then things will go very smoothly. But there's the ability to actually shut the doors to the courthouse, so whatever issue we might have, we can contain it right there at the security checkpoint and deal with whatever issue might occur.
Okay. What kinds of things, for example, other than the obvious, like knives, guns, and stuff like that, what kinds of things won't be allowed? I mean, will it be as stringent, Sheriff, as a nail file or a nail clipper not being allowed?
I don't think so. I don't think we're going to go that far, but certainly we wouldn't allow, you know, a certain type of jackknife or those types of things, or not even allow those at all. But I don't think about a nail clipper or those types of items we would remove from somebody. But a lot of it is when that buzzer goes off and now you have to empty pockets again, it's just much easier for you to leave them out in your vehicle, and there's really no reason to have them in the courthouse anyway.
if someone's bringing in a laptop or a tablet or some other kind of mobile device, will they have to power it up like you do at the airports, or?
I don't think so. I don't
Okay.
think we're going to go that far, at least not initially. If we get information that we should start doing that, we may have to. And we will be sending some of our staffs to some additional training so that they know what to look for as well, the non-obvious and the things that we could possibly miss.
Sure. So how much with these additional positions, I think there were 3 total, is that what you said?
Right. There were 2 part-time deputies and 2 civilian staff.
Okay, so 4 additional people, not necessarily full-time, but how much has this and whatever devices you're going to be using added to the Sheriff's Department budget?
The operational budget is approximately $208,000. It increased to cover the wages and fringes of those particular employees.
Okay.
The other parts of it would be capital dollars that the county board already approved, which isn't necessarily on our budget.
Okay. How big is your budget?
It's roughly $19 million.
Okay, all right. And I'm sure a big chunk of that, like for anybody, whether you're in public service or you're in a private sector job, a lot of it's for wages and, personnel,
Yes.
personnel and their insurance. And that's pretty much true everywhere, like I said. So what kind of, are you looking at any budget cuts at all in order to compensate for the addition because of the security, or are you looking at a budget that is pretty much going to stay the course of the last year or two?
It's pretty much going to stay the course minus those additional positions being added. We run a fairly tight budget. When 85 to 88% of your budget is wages and fringes, it doesn't leave a lot to purchase squad cars and those different items. So we're looking at ways to reduce our operational budget. One of those ways is by raising funds for our canine program. We've done that by selling stuffed toys, which I left in the car, but they are for sale. Although we ran out, we've sold 1,000 of them already. We make about $6.25 off of each toy, or each puppy, and we have another 500 on the way, and we probably have 250 of those sold already from people reserving them.
Wow.
So we will be we're also going to run a couple of brat stands at local festivals in Neenah and Oshkosh and sell them there as well. So we're looking for ways to reduce the operational budget, and obviously that's just a small portion of it, but certainly it's something.
Mm-hmm. Did you sell them at this year's fair as well?
We did.
Okay.
Yeah, we did.
And so what, I might be interested in buying one too. What kinds of stuffed animals are they all dogs, and are there different dogs, or?
They're all the same. It's just a facsimile of our canines. We have 3 of them. We just received a donation, putting our last one on, so we have one on every shift. They are just an extremely valuable tool to us to combat the drug issues that we have. They also are used for tracking. We've had successful tracks, as well as personal protection for our deputies while they're out on patrol.
Okay. And I want to talk about the canine unit too. But anything else about the budget that you think bears mentioning?
Well, you look at $19 million, that's a lot of money, and I understand that, and from a taxpayer's viewpoint, how can it be that much, and what are we getting for that? And I believe that the service we provide is unsurpassed, and we will continue to provide that level of service. We receive comments constantly about that level of service, and again, public safety is not cheap. It's not cheap for the Winnebago County Sheriff's Office, for any other law enforcement agency, but certainly it goes to our quality of life, and it attracts businesses, and it attracts residents to this area.
Mm-hmm. So the canine unit, I think most of us in this area, anyway, have heard about the situation with a canine dog, canine unit, canine officer, however you want to call it, up in the Green Bay area recently, where, and for those who aren't familiar with it or are watching us on YouTube, there was a canine officer that died from heat exhaustion in a car. and the dog was left in the patrol car, and apparently the air conditioning failed, and then it was my understanding also that a mechanism that was supposed to alert the officer or alert someone that the air conditioning had failed, that failed also. So we had 2 mechanical problems, and the unfortunate ending to that story was that the canine officer suffered a pretty tragic death inside of a very hot vehicle. So what kinds of, and I guess my issue with that is, you know, any mechanical kind of thing can fail, and now we've seen that, and we see it all the time with different things, whether it's an airliner that falls from the sky or a train that goes off the tracks. What my feeling is just that the canine officer is a partner to its human officer, and, you know, they should be together at all times. And that's just my perspective as a layperson not working in the law enforcement field. Are there reasons why, and I'm not asking you to judge them,
Sure.
because none of us were
Right.
there,
Right.
but are there some times and reasons why a canine would not be with its human partner? Do situations like that come up?
Sure, it's not always feasible to take the dog with you when you are meeting with somebody. You have to remember that the dog is always wanting to work. That's what they live for, that's what they want to. Now, they're extremely obedient, but certainly there are times when it's not appropriate to take the canine with you. In that particular instance, there were 2 failures that occurred, and that being the air conditioning in the car and then the alarm system. We have that same alarm system in our car. We used to check it on a weekly basis. We now do it on a daily basis. So what happens is when the temperature reaches a certain level in the car, the windows come down, the lights go off, the horn starts to beep. It'll be very evident, and people would recognize, and the handler would recognize that there's an issue. We have also, as a matter of fact, today got approved through the P&F committee to add an additional piece of software to that same system that will make a phone call to the handler, to our dispatch center, and to our patrol supervisor, the latter of the 2 being monitored 24/7. So if that were to occur, if the air conditioning were to quit in one of our cars and that other system were to fail, we now have a 3rd system that will call the handler, call dispatch, and call our patrol supervisor and say we have a problem with the car, and we can get out there immediately and avoid that tragedy. And I'm not judging anything that deputy or that agency did. I think it was just an unfortunate instance that we have not run into before, but certainly I'm sure they've learned from it, we've learned from it, and that's why we're taking these additional measures.
Sure. Well, and what are the odds that 2 things would fail simultaneously?
Right.
You know, that's pretty ironic, really.
Right.
Because, like I said, anything can fail at any time, but for 2 things to fail at the same time, that's, I think, just weird.
It is.
You know?
And the dogs actually enjoy being in the car because it is very cool, and most of them have a very heavy pelt. So when it was extremely hot that day, and just having that dog out there for an extended period of time doing nothing will fatigue the dog. So you need to give him that rest time in the car. And so it's not something that a handler cannot do. I mean, he has to give that time for the dog to recuperate, and that's why the dogs spend a fair amount of time in there.
Okay, all right. You had mentioned heroin use before, and I know that there was a heroin use summit held last summer, and from that, what kinds of things has the department done, or, you know, done differently? You know, what did you see from the heroin summit? Well,
what has actually, what was a summit just for Winnebago County, has turned into 4 counties where Calumet, Outagamie, and Fond du Lac and Winnebago are now talking and working together to combat the heroin problem, because it doesn't know any county boundary. Certainly it is throughout the area. And what we're doing, there's a 4-pillar approach to it, and the law enforcement, what we have done is obviously stepped up some of our enforcement efforts to interdict the drugs that are coming now on I-41, and the investigations of overdoses. We've had 4 or 5 successful investigations where we've held dealers accountable for the death of someone who overdosed on heroin. and there was dealers from Milwaukee, dealers from Detroit, dealers from Minneapolis that we've held accountable when they sold the drugs to someone here in Winnebago County, and then they were sold to someone else who actually overdosed, and we were able to trace it back to the original person who came from a larger metropolitan area with the drugs. So we're actually able to hold people accountable, and when you're selling a small amount of heroin but facing 25 years in prison, that's a heavy price to pay, and we want to make sure that that message is getting out to those dealers in those metropolitan areas that we're not kidding around. We're not going to we're going to take this very seriously, and although the investigations are lengthy and they require a lot of manpower, they're worth it. And then the other thing that we've done is we started a 24/7 alcohol program back in April of 2011, but then in 2014, also in April, we started a drug program, 24/7 program. So when someone is arrested on a drug charge, they meet certain criteria, such as not being a habitual offender, and there's other criteria that we use. And it doesn't necessarily have to be that they dealt drugs or that they were using drugs, but even if they're supporting their habit by committing a burglary, a theft, or something like that, we put them on a 24/7 program from the time of their initial appearance till the time of their sentencing. And it's typically about 80 to 85 days. During that time, we require a urine test from them every 2 days. So they have to stay clean, or we'll hold them accountable by putting them back in jail. And then they have to go in front of the judge and explain why they couldn't stop using heroin, or explain why they couldn't stop using some other illegal drug. And it really has made a difference in some of those people's lives. With the alcohol program, which we've had almost 2,000 offenders on since its inception, we've received comments such as, "I haven't been sober in 10 years. My family actually likes me now." That they making a clear decision because they're not intoxicated or they're not high is something that they haven't done for a very, very long time.
Sure.
So those are the types of things that law enforcement and the other pillars are looking. Then we work with the other rehabilitation portion of it to make sure that they're getting counseling, to make sure that they have the family support that they need. The programs cost the offender a minimal amount of money. I think it's about $21 a week to be on the drug program and to pay for the tests. And family members are willing to pay that because they're stealing more than 21 bucks a week from most of their family, whether it's stealing items and then pawning them to support their habit. So we've seen some success there, and we're going to continue to do that. There's legislation that passed with the governor's budget that allows judges to actually sentence them to 24/7, and we're working through that right now. We're working as a committee. We have people from the judiciary, from the district attorney's office. Senator Gudex was the one that sponsored the bill. Public defender's office, social services, we're all working together so that we're putting the right people on the program and that we can actually impact their lives long term and have them make a lifestyle change versus just a short term, I got to stay sober for 85 days.
Sure. Well, you know, these alternative programs, they're highly successful. And we've seen that not just with this program now that you mentioned, but with all of the stuff, you know, the drug court and teen court, all this stuff that our judges and our courts and our law enforcement agencies have been using for a number of years. So this is good news to hear that another one is so successful, and that you're not seeing a lot of recidivism and that kind of thing. So when we talk about this type of a program, I know it's still fairly new, you know, but it's 4 years old. So you've got an opportunity to see some data. Have you seen people coming back and reoffending, or has it been pretty clean?
We are about to start that process of looking at our recidivism rate because now we're starting to get enough people on the program. The problem with the OWI, or the drunk driving program, is that we're really only impacting a small number of drunk drivers. We only catch a certain amount of them, so we can only impact the ones that we catch, and those are the ones that we're going to look at, but there's still the other as much as 80% that are out there that we haven't caught yet.
Sure.
So that part is still concerning when it comes to the drunk driving issue that we have. But we are seeing that people are making lifestyle changes. Statistically, and it's a little different in each of the states, but in Wisconsin, statistically you have to drive drunk 74 times to be caught. So the second time offender is now 148 times that they've driven intoxicated. I think that person has a problem, and it's not just with being responsible, there's an alcohol problem, and that's what we want to help them with. And we know that they may have a relapse, and that's the hard part for law enforcement. We don't we want to look at things with using more strict rules and maybe adding more jail time, but that's not always the answer. We have to go back to the root problem and how can we help this person, and that's the change in law enforcement that I think we're seeing overall is looking at the social problems differently than additional jail time or arresting more people, because that's only adding more people to our jail.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about your jail capacity very shortly, but that number that you just cited is staggering to me, that a person can drive drunk or buzzed that many times on average before getting caught. I mean, that number blows my mind, really.
Right. Yeah, and like I said, it's different in each of the states, and people can argue that particular statistics, but it is staggering. And even the first-time offender, now granted, you could drive drunk one time and be arrested, learn your lesson, and it's over. But certainly if statistically you've driven 73 times prior to that, I think you have a problem.
Yeah.
And if it's not an alcohol problem, it's at least a responsible drinking problem, and you need to get some help.
Well, and as I said, these alternative programs are helping to keep people out of the jails as well. What is the population of the jail right now, and are we still getting inmates from other counties and or from the state in our jail?
We are. Our jail count is about 280, 285.
Okay.
We were projected to be in the 360 range, with our functional capacity being 320. So at 320 inmates, we can no longer objectively classify them, keeping sentence from non-sentence, keeping violent offenders from non-violent offenders. Those types of things that we need to do to keep our jail safe is at 320 inmates. And we're at about that 280 mark, but the study that was done showed us being at 365. So we know the diversion programs are working, other things are working as well, and crime is down as a whole. And I think the economy picking up has something to do with it. It's not just our diversion programs. But we should be in the build stage right now of adding on to our jail, and we're not. And of course that's where we want to be and would love to be forever. We do still have inmates from the state that we get on felony probation holds. We have intensive sanctioned inmates that we do receive some funding for, and then we are accepting a small amount of inmates from other counties that have some overcrowding issues. So there is some revenue stream that's coming in there, and it's fairly substantial, and we can continue to do that as long as our counts are in that range that we can still handle our current inmates.
So we're not looking right now or actively planning on an expansion?
We are not.
Okay. I know that at one time, and this was a few years back, there was talk between Winnebago County, Outagamie County, and I believe it was Calumet County about kind of having a tri-county jail. I've not heard anything about that in some time. Is it safe to say that that idea has come and gone and is no longer on the table for discussion?
Well, what we were looking at was a regional facility to hold felony probation holds.
Okay.
And those are really state inmates. They were convicted of a felony, placed on probation or parole, so they may have gone to prison, and then came out of prison and now are in our facility, our jails, whether it's Outagamie, Calumet, or Winnebago. And we had asked the state to look at creating a three-county regional facility to take those probation holds, the felonies, which number about 50 inmates a day. And if you reduce the count by 50 in any of our facilities, it'll make a substantial difference for a very, very long time. And the state wasn't interested, and statutorily we couldn't push anything because of current crowding numbers not being overcrowded enough. So it died on the vine. Can it be brought back up? Certainly, and we would push the issue if we got into the overcrowding issue of those felony probation parole holds being the state's issue.
Well, I've actually recently heard that, Outagamie County is talking about doing their own jail, building a different place that's bigger and newer. I don't know where things are at with that, but if they're looking at pursuing something on their own, then they would probably be out of conversations about a tri-county type thing, I would think.
Right.
So, now where are our juveniles going? Because they used to go up to Outagamie County. Outagamie County stopped accepting, they've done away with their juvenile facility, I'll call it, even though it was still within the same building. So where are juvenile offenders going now?
They're going to Fond du Lac County Juvenile
Okay.
Detention. And although it is a little longer distance for our north end agencies to transport to Fond du Lac, the Sheriff's Office on most occasions will transport for them. But yeah, it's not nearly as convenient, but certainly it meets the needs of our county.
Okay, all right. And I want to go back for just a moment to drug use. We've heard in the last year or so about some meth labs that the Oshkosh police have found in the city, and I believe it was usually students who were allegedly, making these meth labs. Are you seeing an increase countywide in meth use and distribution too?
Yeah, we have seen an increase in meth use in the 4-county area with our Lake Winnebago area MIG unit. A substantial increase in the amount of drugs seized from that being meth. We also have had some meth labs out in the county. I don't know that it necessarily is associated anything with any college students or anything of that nature, but certainly the smaller one-pot type meth labs are more prevalent than they had been in the past. They're not elaborate. They aren't putting out a large quantity, but there's more of them. I believe that Winnebago County accounted for 50% of the meth labs in 2014 in the state of Wisconsin. That was something we were extremely concerned about. Now, we haven't had an issue in 2015 like we did in 2014, so hopefully the efforts that we're putting forth are working, and it sounds like they are.
Okay, good. Child pornography is another issue, excuse me, that is something that we're hearing a lot about, and you guys are catching more child pornographers. Are you using technology, more technology to catch them, or what would you attribute the fact to that you are catching more?
Well, we have a position at the agency that we share with the district attorney's office that his sole job is, not sole job, but certainly one of his main jobs is internet crimes against children. And we have seen, and not that I don't believe that it's something new. I don't believe that it's something that's just popped up. It's just something that we didn't put a lot of effort into because we didn't know enough about it. Brown County had started to do it. There are some pretty elaborate equipment that we have purchased, some software that we've purchased, and we can't keep up. And the amount of child porn that is being distributed, downloaded, and then there's sexual assaults that will occur from that. There's grooming of children that we're finding. That is something that we're putting a lot of focus on now, and will continue to protect our kids.
All right, excellent. We're going to take a real short break, and when we come back, the Sheriff and I will continue our conversation about crime in Winnebago County and other things that are happening within the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. We'll be right back.
If you have expired or unused medication, don't flush it, pour it down the drain, or toss it in the trash. Safely dispose of unwanted or expired medications at the drug drop box located inside the Oshkosh Police Department. It's convenient and anonymous, safe and secure, and it's open to everyone 24/7. Drop off your prescriptions, over-the-counter drugs, pet meds, and more. Keep drugs out of the reach of children and out of our water supply. Dispose of unwanted or expired medications at the drug drop box. For more information, visit the Oshkosh Police Department website at oshkoshpd.com.
Looking to give back to the community? Want to help fight hunger in the Oshkosh area? You can by donating food, your time, or your money. The Oshkosh Area Community Pantry needs more than 250 volunteers to operate and can always use new faces to help with a wide variety of tasks. The pantry cannot do it without you. Please consider helping fight hunger in Oshkosh. For more information, visit us online at oacptoday.org. That's oacptoday.org.
It's not just what you say, it's how you say it. It's said that a narrow vision is divisive, a broad vision expansive, but a divine vision is all-inclusive. Welcome all groups of citizens working for the greater good of the community. Speak your piece and be inclusive. The Oshkosh Civility Project is a community-based effort. More information at oshkoshcivilityproject.org.
And welcome back to the second half of Eye on Oshkosh. We're continuing our conversation with Sheriff John Matz from the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department. We had talked earlier about the unfortunate incident with the canine officer up in Green Bay, but I want to talk because I happen to know someone who's an officer with you guys who just recently got a canine. And can we talk a little bit, Sheriff, about what kind of training goes into this? And yes, it's a working officer, but it's also a dog. And so how does that, how do you keep the balance with the dog, you know, between being a canine companion and a working canine officer? So let's start with the training. How much training is involved in this, and how much do they cost?
Dogs cost about $11,000 to $13,000. It depends upon where you get them and what comes with that $11,000 to $13,000. How we go through our selection process, we have deputies that will apply to be a canine deputy. They go through an interview process, and then we choose who is the best fit and who has exhibited the type of additional responsibility already, so we know they'll be successful. Then what we do is we send that deputy to our kennel, it's down in Campbellsport, the one that we use, the vendor, and he will bring in several dogs, and they will try to make a match immediately to see what kind of personality the handler has and the dog has. And it becomes pretty evident. And then we will select a dog. The handler and the new canine will then attend 4 weeks of training down there, and that's where they really bond. That's where they get that sense of connection, and it continues to grow, obviously. And there is that fine line between having a dog as a pet and a dog as a working dog. So our deputies are instructed, and they follow it to the T, that although the canine is part of your family, it certainly is a deputy for the sheriff's office, and it's an employee of ours, and it needs to continue to be a working dog. And they do a great job of it, and they walk that line between having time with the family, because you do need to have that bonding time, and being a working dog.
Mm-hmm. And you know, it's the same, I think, with a canine companion for, you know, service animals, companion animals that go into nursing homes and assisted living facilities and things like that. You know, you know that when it has its vest on, it's working. And geez, I know not to pet one when they've got their vest on, but I thought you could at least say hi to the dog. But I was not chastised, but a woman just asked me very politely if I wouldn't even make eye contact with her dog or say hello to it. And I thought, geez, I've never heard that one before. What kinds of things, little protocol type things, are involved with a canine?
The canine handlers are very good about talking to the public and making sure that the dog isn't put into a situation where we can have an incident occur. Most of our dogs, and each of our 3 dogs are very different. They have very different personalities. They have different levels of aggressiveness, and when I'm talking about aggressiveness, more so their drive. They all have a high drive, but we have one in particular that is extremely high drive and always wants to be working. And then we have one that's kind of in the middle, and we have one that's a little bit more laid back and is more suited for the public events that we may have. Still a wonderful working dog and does a great job for us, but also has the ability to turn that off a little bit and then be more of the public type dog.
Sure. We never want to hear about an officer being shot, but are the penalties for shooting or killing a canine officer the same as if you killed a human officer?
I don't believe that if you killed a canine dog that it's the same as what it would be for the deputy itself, but I know it's a felony, and it's an extremely serious felony, and our dogs are put into very dangerous situations. And I say this, that we will put a dog in a situation before we'll put a deputy in a situation that we can put that dog into, whether it's an armed suspect and we have no other alternative but to send the dog in. Getting a dog hurt is different than getting a deputy hurt. Mm-hmm. And those are the choices that we have to make, and they're unfortunate, but certainly we can replace a dog, we can't replace a deputy.
Mm-hmm. Right. Although, technically, you can't really replace a dog.
No, you're right, and I love dogs
and
too.
I talk to you, I say that, Sheriff, only from an animal lover standpoint. They're all very different, but I get what I get where you're going with that. One of the things we also hear about a lot in the news is 911 operators really handling certain calls in a less than professional way, and in many cases, true tragedy comes about because of the way they handled or mishandled a call. Fortunately, we don't have that kind of an incident here, and I haven't ever heard of any going on here, which is a good thing and we should be proud of for our county. But what kind of training goes into being a 911 operator here?
The lengthiest FTO program, field training program that we have is our telecommunicators. It is about 6 months long, depending upon how much experience they bring with them. And they are unbelievable. They're extremely professional, and under stress, they handle multiple officers, multiple agency, multiple disciplines. They can have fire, law enforcement, rescue, all talking to them at the same time, and they handle it with ease. Now, we are just very fortunate that who we have in our communication center are just top-notch, and there have been instances where that hasn't been the case. And we review on a constant basis those calls that come in, how they're handled by the call taker, the dispatcher, how it's dispatched out. We're constantly checking their work, and we're not finding any issue, but certainly by looking at the quality and trying to improve the quality, that's why we're able to maintain what we have.
Sure. Well, I just think, hats off and kudos to you and the department and whoever is specifically training these individuals, because the things we hear in the media, we've all heard some of these 911 calls because they're recorded, and it's really tragic what some things come about because some operators have not done their job very well at all. Mm-hmm. So I think that's to your credit. The other thing that we're hearing a lot about these days is violence against officers. It seems like in the last couple of weeks there have been several attacks on officers. Does that affect the morale of any of the officers within your department, Sheriff?
I think it'd be foolish to think it doesn't. What they do is dangerous all by itself, and at any given time, in any given area, even though we live in a very safe area, we have people that want to hurt us. And that's even before all of this additional violence started. And it is extremely concerning. Our deputies, whether they're in the jail or whether they're out on patrol, or detectives, always have their head on a swivel, always looking for that danger that may be lurking. And it's even more evident now when you are executed, fueling your squad car up, executed in your home, or set up, as I think will be the case in Illinois. You almost can't defend against it, but certainly we will continue to train our deputies to the best of our ability, give them the best equipment so that we can provide the best service.
Mm-hmm. You know, first we heard about the violence on blacks, and now we're hearing about kind of the tables being turned a little bit, and violence on officers, and it's not at all always blacks who are attacking officers. It's white people too,
Mm-hmm.
it's other minorities. Do you feel at all that the ability to conceal and carry has had any kind of an impact on this, or would these people just have been someone who broke the law anyway to carry a weapon?
I think that's the case. I don't think that concealed carry has increased any crime. I don't believe that the individuals that are attacking law enforcement, they're not solid citizens. They're not individuals that have the type of background that would allow them to have a concealed carry for the most part. So I don't think that had anything to do with it. It is alarming. It is something that we can't tolerate, and I hope it stops, certainly, and we just need to make sure that our law enforcement officers are safe, and they're doing a job that most other people don't want to do.
Yeah.
And they do it because they want to help people, because they want to make their community safer. It's not for the paycheck, as they can make the same amount of money working somewhere else.
Or more.
Or more. And not work holidays, weekends, nights. It's because they want to do it. Mm-hmm. And we need to show them the respect that they deserve.
If this trend of people attacking officers continues, do you see that as, I already hear of people, years ago you'd hear kids, oh, I want to be a cop, I want to be a policeman. You don't hear that so much anymore. Nor do you hear so much about people wanting to be school teachers anymore. Mm-hmm. Do you see this kind of violence as making a difference in what kids want to do when they grow up?
It certainly does. We have seen, it is becoming more and more difficult to attract qualified people. There's a test that they go through, a written test, there's a physical agility test, and more so there's a background investigation, and you can't have lived a life that shows indiscretions, at least constant or serious indiscretions, and they're not passing those. The people that we're backgrounding are not passing it. They're not passing our psychological. We're having an extremely difficult time attracting quality people. And if you hire difficult, you can manage easy. And that's becoming more and more hard to get the type of employee that we need.
Sure. Our society and our community in particular is becoming so much more diverse. And I know that the police department has actually taken like racial literacy training to help bridge those differences and in understanding between the races and so forth. Has your department done anything like that, or do you anticipate doing anything like that in the future?
We have done some diversity training, and we'll continue to do that. We will step up our efforts. We recognize that there are issues that the community at least believes exists. We are also purchasing body cameras for all of our deputies on the patrol division in the upcoming budget. We already have in-car squad cameras, but they're limited to angles and distances, but we will be purchasing those in 2016 as a way to as a learning tool to make sure that the interactions are appropriate, and I'm sure that they are. But certainly there's certain ways to say things, and they can be appropriate, but there's better ways to say things and better ways to get compliance, and those are the things we hope to learn from body cameras.
Sure. You had mentioned to me earlier about a body scanner. You want to tell us about that?
Sure. Along with the drug issues that we have had in the community, we've also had seen an extreme uptick in the amount of contraband coming into our jail. And that contraband would come in through body orifices. You can use your imagination, but we had heroin come into our jail. We had Suboxone, which is basically a Listerine strip that can be concealed, but it is used much like methadone is used, and you do get high from it, and you can overdose from it. And we've seen other types of pills and whatnot come into our jail. We had an overdose, a heroin overdose in our jail when someone snorted heroin that was brought in through a body cavity. So at that point, we were able to bring the person back with Narcan and avoid a real tragedy. We started to look at procedures and what can we change to limit that contraband. And one of the things that we had found, the federal prisons had started purchasing body scanners. So when a person comes into the facility, when they get to our booking area, they go through the body scanner, and we see much what you would see in an airport when they look at the internal makeup of an individual. And we have found heroin already in body cavities with the use of the scanner. Most people will say at that point, I have something, I'll remove it for you, because they know we're going to find it. So we have really reduced that, if not eliminated, the contraband coming into our facility. And that was purchased through the Jail Assessment Fund. That is money that comes from the state that is used to increase the security of our facility, and also used to purchase items for inmates.
Okay. And what's the average cost of a body scanner, do you know?
About $175,000.
It's pricey.
So it's pricey.
But if it keeps contraband out of the jail, then it's well spent, every penny.
Right. And one in-custody death could be 10 times that, depending upon circumstances.
Sure.
So we are, as odd as it might seem, we have to protect the inmates from themselves. They're going to do things that defy common sense. And our job is to make sure the facility is as safe as possible, and when there are things out there that we can do to make it safer, we have to do that. And again, that came from money that was put into a jail assessment fund, which is money that is garnered from citations and those types of things, and it can only be used for very limited things in the jail.
Okay. We're down to just like about 3 or 4 minutes left here, Sheriff. I want to touch a little bit on social media. And first of all, has social media made your life, from a crime standpoint, more difficult? Not just your life, but the lives of your officers and deputies.
Well, you know, it is definitely an added twist to what we do. There are many positive things that come from social media when we can post things and ask for information, and it is widely disseminated immediately, either through Twitter or through Facebook or whatever else is out there that I'm not familiar with. But
I can't keep up.
Right. But the deputy that takes care of ours is aware of, and so we can immediately notify people and ask for information. But along with that comes cyberbullying, those types of things, which have led to actually kids killing themselves, committing suicide because they were bullied over the internet. The county board adopted a statute or an ordinance that we can now cite people for that. If we find that the things that they're posting meet that level of bullying or harassment, we can actually cite somebody for it. To my knowledge, we haven't had to do that, but certainly when you are faceless and you can say things and do things over social media, it creates issues.
Okay, excellent. And of course, you guys, as you mentioned, you're using Facebook to get information out to people. And I would just encourage people to go to the Sheriff Department website because there's a lot of really good information out there. on you know, how to get accident reports, jail visitation rights, and things like that. And there was one thing in particular that struck me. Oh, scam alerts. Now, is that something that you guys are actually putting out, or does that come from another department within the county?
No, those are things that we become aware of.
Okay.
Other agencies will share it with us, or something that we've dealt with, whether it's somebody that's sealing driveways and taking money but not using proper material, whether it's a roofing contractor that's not really a roofing contractor, or someone that's scamming the elderly, because typically they will prey on those types of individuals. We put that out on our social media.
Okay. So again, I would encourage everyone to, you know, visit them on Facebook, and also go to the county's website for the Sheriff's Department. And I believe we've been putting that up through the hour. So anyway, thank you so much for being here. The hour flew by.
It did.
Thanks
you.
again. We'll have you back again soon.
Thank you.
That's going to do it for us. We'll see you next time. Until then, take care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.
That did fly by.
I know.
I was a little worried.